It's Monica from Life is Art, and it's Wednesday. Let's create. We are going to be looking at creating an accordion card today with a little bit of a twist to it because we're going to add a little something something on the front to make it exciting. And this is the style of card that comes up quite often during 30-minute card making stash dash on Tuesday nights. And it's quite often the one that everybody goes, how do we make that again? So I thought it would be a good idea to come on and create an accordion card. And I'm going to be using the Hey Handsome collection, which is the featured collection for the month of May. And you can see it here on the front cover of the April to June catalog. Good evening, Ellie. Nice to see you're jumping on to watch live. And Joanne is here too. Good evening. If you're joining us this evening, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. And if you're watching later on replay, you can say replay. So we are going to be looking at Hey Handsome. And we actually recreated this particular layout during the online crop this past weekend. That was exciting. But we're going to be using some of the pattern papers from this collection. We're going to be using some coordinating cardstock. We're going to be using a Picture My Life card. And we're going to be using a couple other things that you'll see as we go along. So pulling in a couple things from the core catalog as well. We're also using the Hey Handsome Scrapbooking stamp set, and we've been using that one quite a bit too. So let's get started with our accordion card. The first thing that we need is the paper that we're going to use to make the base of the card, and I've decided to use pine for my card, and this piece of pine cardstock is 11 inches by 5.5. Hey, Leanne, nice to see you're watching. And Paula's here too. Hello, hello. And so this particular piece of cardstock, I'm going to be using it with the dark side up. And what will happen is that almost all of that light side will then be the back of the card. But a tiny little bit of it will be showing on the front, and that's okay. So we're going to take our 11 by 5.5 card, and we're going to line it up here. If you're using a scoreboard, you can use that too. But I do my scoring just with my Versamat and a ruler. And let me grab those things. And so I'm lining it up on my Versamat. Our first score line, which again, I'm going to post all the measurements and everything afterwards. Our first score line is at 1 1/4. And this is probably the part of the card that everybody always asks about, and that's what size and where do I score it? So we're going to score it at 1 1/4, and then we're going to shift over and we're going to score it at 4 inches. 4 inches. And then we're going to shift over again and we're going to score it at 6 3/4. 6 3/4. Like so. Okay, so I'll just review that again. We scored it at 1 1/4, 4 inches, and then at 6 3/4. Okay? All right, now our first thing we want to do, this part here is going to be 5.5 by 4 1/4. So that's the back of our card. So let's first fold that towards the front. And make sure everything lines up nice and straight. We're going to crease that down. Now you can see the difference between the front and the back of the cardstock. So you've got your front side, which is the true color side of the pine, and then the back side, which is a little bit lighter. So that's fun when you want to have two different options for each color, is that the cardstock is double-sided. So we've got our first fold, and if I turn it this way, this is all the parts that's going to be part of the front of the accordion card, and this is the base, okay? So we folded it like that. Now we're going to go to the next score line, which is our 4-inch score line, and we're going to fold it back. And then make sure everything lines up nice and straight, and crease that down. And then the last one you're going to guess is, we're going to fold forward because we're creating an accordion, right? Back and forth, just like you would have made a paper fan, you know, in school when you were a kid. That's all we're doing. We're just folding back and forth. So let's go ahead and we'll crease that down like so. So now if I pick this up, you can see where we get that accordion name from. So if you look at it this way, it's shaped sort of like a very strange W. But that's how you create the base of an accordion card. Now, everything after this is just decoration. So you can pick and choose however you want to decorate your card after this. We're going to start with a couple pieces of pattern paper from the Hey Handsome collection. And these first two pieces have been cut to 1 inch. Sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. 1 inch by 5 1/4. And we want 2 of those. So let me go ahead and add some adhesive onto the back. And this is the fun pattern. It kind of reminds me of a tie. You know, a quintessential tie pattern. Sort of got a diamond-y shape and then circles in the middle. And, you know, it just says tie to me, which is kind of cool. I think it's really neat that they created a collection, close to my heart, created a collection that has sort of a lot of textile influence in it. And around our house, that's a good thing because my one son likes sewing and dressing like he belongs in the 20s to the 50s. And so this comes in really handy for scrapbooking a lot of his stuff. And for these two pieces, you could do separate patterns. You could pick and choose different patterns. In fact, I could just flip this over and use the plaid. But I'm going to continue the same pattern for this particular one. And pull the adhesive off there. And this piece is going to go on the inside of this little front panel. So we'll just line it up, leaving a nice edge of the pine cardstock all the way around. Now I could ink the edges of my pattern paper. Sure I could. I could distress the edges if I wanted. Absolutely. But I'm just going to go with the way it is. Now the next thing I want is I need 2 pieces that are, and I wrote down the measurement wrong, so I'm going to look here, 2.5 by 5 1/4. So let me just fix that here because I'm going to type it in later. So 2.5 by 5 1/4, and I don't want to do it wrong. And this is the pattern that I love the best, I think, from this collection. It's this sort of tweedy woven textile pattern that's just gorgeous. And then I've also got a piece of mink cardstock, and I've actually used the lighter side of the mink. So these are 2.5 by 5 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and add some adhesive to the back of this. Scooch myself up a bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm not hiding off the corner. All right. And this is going to go on the second panel. Now you do not have to put pattern on every panel. In fact, we're going to put a panel here on the next side that gives us a spot to write our message in our card. So there we go. Nice pattern there. And then we're going to open it up to this side. We could even open it like this. You could be doing this all while it's flat. There we go. And we're going to add our piece of mink. And this will give us our spot to write our message. So for this, I want to add a little bit of a sentiment on the inside of my card. So from the Hey Handsome Scrapbooking stamp set, I chose this sentiment here, the looking good. And I used that on another card before, but I think it really is just, it's a nice sentiment, right? Looking good. Everybody wants to hear that. And I'm going to use paprika ink for this, just to be a little bit bolder and stand out from all of the green that's happening on the card so far, green and gray. But you'll see how it ties in here in a minute. I just want to make sure I've got this well inked. And again, I'm going to scooch down a little bit. And I'm going to leave a little bit of space at the top and then go ahead and stamp this. I should be using the back side of my Versamat for stamping my sentiment to make sure it gets a good stamp, but I didn't do that. So it is what it is. So there's our looking good, and then I'm going to flip this over, add some adhesive, and pop it in this panel right here. We're just kind of working our way across the card. And we'll leave a little bit of the pine showing all the way around. Are looking good. There we go. And we've left some space top and bottom for adding in our message. And then on the last panel, I want to use this piece of pattern paper. Isn't this fun? I love all the little icons. There's Vintage Auto, Retro Car Repair. There's a Sweet Bakery, Live Liberty Warehouse, Gear and Garb, the Bike Club. There's Outwork. There's Work Hard, Farmers Market, Handsome and Kind Clothing Company, the Gent Suits, Food and Stuff, Grocery and Items. You know, so there's lots of fun little things, bait and tackle on this particular card. The backside is all words that could be attributed to whoever you're sending this card to. And we're just going to go ahead and add our adhesive on there. Just like this. And I don't even know if I gave you a measurement for this. This particular piece is 4 by 5 1/4. I could probably measure it faster than looking at my sheet on the side. But it's 4 by 5 1/4. And we're just going to stick that on there. And so now when we fold up our card, all of these pieces will overlap, creating a nice little view of all of these really handsome patterns. So isn't that really fun? But now we need a way to kind of keep this closed because it wants to pop open, right? So we are going to create a belly band for this. And so we're using a piece of pine cardstock again. And this one has been cut to 9.5 by 1.5. And we're going to use the dark side facing out. So I'm going to flip it over. I want to put my belly band in behind. And sometimes people don't really think this through so much. You want to put your belly band in behind and then come around to the front. And you don't want to make it too tight, but you want to make it tight enough. It's like wearing a belt, right? If you put your belt on too tight, you'll get uncomfortable after a while. And so I always think of a belly band on a card as kind of like wearing a belt yourself. And you definitely want some breathing room. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of wrap it right around. And we're leaving the overhang in the front of the card because we're going to put something on here to hide that. So you don't want to wrap it from front to back because then your seam will be showing and there won't be anything to cover it. So what I want to do is I want to make it the size and then I want to back off the edge of the belly band just a little bit. I'm just pulling it a little bit to the left so that there's a little bit of breathing room so that it will be easier to slide it on and off. Okay? And then we can take it off and add some adhesive. Now, this is probably a good time to use red tape because it's extra super sticky. So whatever adhesive you have that's the most extra super sticky, that's what you're going to want to use. Hey, Deborah, nice to see you're watching. Oh, I had a piece of paper hanging on my scissors. Oh, I was cutting masks using sticky notes when I was doing some crafting earlier today. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to add some adhesive at the end of this flap, like so. On the front side of it, and then on the back side of this one at the end, we want to add a piece of adhesive. And that way we know that both ends of our belly band are going to be adhered together. So there we go. Our sticky red tape. And then we can take the adhesive off of this one. And the adhesive backing off of this one. I said adhesive. I meant adhesive backing. Like so. Whoops. It ran away. And even though we've kind of measured around our card, it's still the best policy to put it back on the card to get it stuck down because it helps you with keeping it that little bit of extra room. So you want to line it up nice and then just go ahead and stick it down like that. And now there should be still enough room that you can take it off, but that you can also put it back on, because sometimes that's the hard part. Getting it off is not the hard part. It's the putting it back on. And of course I struggle for half a second there, but it should slide nicely. Okay, so now we want to create sort of a focal point to the front of our card. And for that, I am going to create a shaker card. And so I've got my shaker window, circle shaker window thin cuts. That's a mouthful. And so for the base of the shaker, you want to use this big circle. For the topper for the shaker, you want to use this frame. And then there's also a couple shapes in here that you can cut out to create your own specialty colored confettis to go inside your shaker card. But I'm going to be using some silver sequins for mine, because I think the silver would look nice with the grays and things that are happening here. My other choice actually was these gold stars. So while I'm starting to create here, I want you to let me know in the comments whether you should think I should go with the silver sequins or the gold stars. So I'll set them both there, and you can let me know as we work along. Gold stars or silver sequins. Okay, let me scooch that out of the way. I need to bring in a Picture My Life card. And this one here, the Hey Dude Picture My Life card, it's on 2 different levels here. This is what I want to use for the front of the card. And so I'm going to take my base, and this will be inside my shaker. So what I want to do is I want to just carefully line it up so that it's kind of centered how I want it with my circle. And then I'm going to bring in some washi tape and just stick it down so it doesn't shift when I put it into my die cut machine. Leanne says some of both could do. Anybody else? Gold stars or silver sequins? So then I just pop it in my machine with whatever sandwich works for die cutting and run it through like so. And then there we have our Hey Dude. And that's going to go on the front of our card. I'm just going to set it off to the side here and put our thin cut back on the sheet. And then I thought I would use a piece of paprika cardstock, which matches the coloration in the pattern paper at the back, to create the frame. So I've got my frame here, and it's probably a good idea for me to use a piece of washi tape just to make sure it doesn't shift around. There we go. Stick that on there, run this through the machine. Shaker cards are really fun. They're not that hard to make, you just have to work through the steps. There we go. And you're going to get that. You're going to get a circle that you can save for something else. And then also the frame. And the frame has a stitching design around it. Then we can get rid of our machine. I always put mine on the floor beside me when it's not on the shelf. And that way it's out of the way and I'm not going to mess it up. Now, there's one more element that I want to add. Because this is pattern paper, well, actually, it's a Picture My Life card, so it's not that bad. If you use pattern paper, you may want to stiffen this up by adding in another piece of cardstock. So I've got a piece of black cardstock that I cut using that same circle die, and I've just covered it in adhesive, and I can go ahead and layer up these two pieces to create a nice thick base for our shaker card, just because it's going to be moving off and on the front of the card because it's on a belly band. I think it just needs a little bit of stiffening so that our shaker card still works really nicely. So there's our Hey Dude. We've got our frame. The next thing we need is, and I don't want to forget about this, before we put our shaker card on, I want to attach this striped piece. I saw it after I moved my card out of the way, But this little stripy piece is going to go on here for a little extra decoration. It also pulls in that paprika color from the back. And this is 4¼ inches by 1¼ just to add a little more design there to the front. Now, a lot of this will get covered up, but that's okay. We know it's there. There we go. And there we go. And depending on what you decide to add on the front of your card, you will have more or less of this pattern piece showing. And there we go. Okay. So now for our shaker. Have we got any takers on which one we should put in here? Deborah says silver. Leanne says silver. Okay, so we're going to go for silver. So in your shaker window foam and acetate package, you're going to get some circle acetates. And you're going to get some foams. Now these foams also come full of little squares of foam, but I've gone ahead and used them. And that's one of my top tips for using these shaker foams is that it works easier if you take the all the little squares of foam out and use them before you use the ring, because it's just easier to get the ring off when there's not all those squares of foam in there. I have lived and learned. So what I want to do is I want to take the backing off of my foam, and I like to hold my foam on either side like this, so I'm not putting my finger on the adhesive part, but I also like to kind of just wait a second, because I've just peeled it off the backing, and so it can pull it a little bit out of round. And so by pulling it out of round, if I go and put it right down here right now, it won't line up quite right. So we want to make sure it lines up as well as it can. So then once it's had a moment to just kind of relax and go back into shape, we want to come over here and stick it down, and it's kind of a one and done thing. So you want to get a good line up before you stick it down, and you want to make sure there's no sticky adhesive showing to the back, which this one isn't, so we did pretty good, because if we had any stickiness on the back, it would affect how well it will slide on and off our card. So there we go. The next little tip that's really good to do when you're making a shaker card is to bring in your anti-static pouch and this little adhesive ring all around the inside edge. You want to take your anti-static pouch and just kind of work around the ring on the inside. And what that's going to do is if there's any little sticky bits from that foamy adhesive part, it's going to coat it in the little powder that's in the pouch. Give it a dusting off there. And that will keep it so that your sequins and things won't get jammed and stuck into the adhesive, and then they won't shake. You don't want that. You want your shaker to shake. So once we've got it done like that, then we can bring in our sequins, and we've decided on the silver sequins. So the trick with shaker cards is that you put enough, but not too much. If you put too much, it's not going to shake as well, and it's going to fill your card. It's going to fill the shaker, and even when it's standing up, that one had like a whole stack of little stars there. That was kind of interesting. It's going to cover all your words. So I'm only going to put that little amount, and I sometimes like to kind of play with it for a second before I put the lid on, as it were, because I don't want to have a whole bunch of sequins all piled up in one spot, because then they won't shake either, because they'll be kind of stuck against they'll be wedged. They'll get wedged. You don't want to give your card a wedgie. All right. So then they're all staticky. They want to stick to your hands. The next thing we need to do is this little portion of the acetate here has a protective layer of plastic on it. It's important to peel that off. My daughter always wants to volunteer to do this because she finds it very satisfying to peel that protective plastic off. So we've got that ready, sitting there on the side. Now we need to take our foam protective backing off. And this is also tricky, and sometimes I like to do where I just kind of use my pokey tool to hold it down. You want to peel it without pulling too hard, because if you pull too hard, it's going to lift your thing and give it a little jolt, and then all the little sequins are going to go flying all over the place and get stuck in the adhesive. Ask me how I know. How do I know that happens? Because it's happened many times. And then the next step is to take our acetate, which may have some static qualities to it right now. So we're going to have to take it, and I like to put my finger on either side of the acetate so that I kind of have a good judgment. I can feel the adhesive when I get close to it so that I know I'm lining it up. And then you're just going to go for it, and you will see some of the sequins kind of pop up and try to grab onto it. But you just go ahead and lay it down there like that, and you can give it a little shake. Make sure everything's moving around. Hey, dude. Yeah, I might have put too much in there, but that's okay. We'll survive. Hey, dude. And then we can go ahead and add our little topper on here. And the best thing for that, I have found, are these glue dots. Liquid glue will hold for a while, but then I find that liquid glue will also peel off, and you don't want to give somebody a card and have it start falling apart on them. So I like to use the glue dots, and you can just go around the circle, picking up these little micro glue dots, and all the way around. Just work your way around. It's going to take a few. Take a look. A couple more. There we go. 2 more, I think. They're so clear, they're hard to see. But the easiest way to pick them up is to pick them up right with the paper you're using. You see now? I think we got it good. Excellent. And now again, this one we want to try and line it up because those little glue dots are going to stick once we get it down there. So we'll take our fingers on either side. Try not to bow it too much. And see if we can't get it on there. There we go. If you've never tried making a shaker card before, it's kind of a little nerve-wracking, but it does work. So there's our Hey Dude shaker card, and they do move around, so we can add this on the front. And let me see, we're going to go line up our words and flip it right over and center it. And that will help us to determine where we need to add our adhesive, because we can follow where the belly band is. And I'm going to use my really sticky tape on this because I don't want it to pop off. There we go. And one down here. I'm not going right to the edge of this belly band because I don't want it to get misaligned when I stick it on later. There we go. Squish that down. And there we go. Remove the backing. This red tape is really good, but the plastic, when it comes off, is so staticky that I always find you can't just toss it into your rubbish bin. You have to, I always have to stick it to my table because it doesn't ever want to come off my hand. You know, you go to throw it away and it sticks right to you. And I've got a piece of it's the sticky note again. It's come back. Okay, good enough. It's under the tape. Alrighty. So then we can go ahead and line it up and stick it down on the front of our belly band shaker. Hey Dude. And then when we pull that off, we have our fun accordion card. So we started out with our pine cardstock base. We did our scoring, and I will post those measurements. Then we added on our pattern papers, this fun one here that looks like a tie. We've got our tweedy. We've got our part where we can write our message, and then we have the really fun icons. The backside is also a space we could use if we have to write a really long message. Then we created a belly band, leaving a little extra room so that we can easily slide it off and on. It's always easier to put the wider side in first. I wasn't doing it that way. Slide it on. We've got a little extra pattern on there, and then we've used our Picture My Life card to create our shaker. Yay! Hey Dude, and the fun paprika border to pull in all those colors. I think it's super fun. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that come together. And if you create an accordion card like this, then snap a photo and post it in the comments, and I would love to see it. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again soon. All right. Toodaloo. Bye.